Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1585A, and today's date is June 6th, 2018, and the title of the episode is World Leaders Are Worried About the Global Economy. The world is on fire. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about how countries around the world have been purchasing a lot of gold or repatriating their gold. And we know that China and Russia, they've been purchasing a lot of gold. We also know that Germany, Hungary, Turkey, and many other countries, well, they've been repatriating their gold. They wanted their gold back. Now, there's a reason for this because they understand and they realize that gold is basically an insurance policy. It's a confidence booster, and it's real money. Because they know once the paper money implodes, they're going to need something where the people can look at this and say, okay, we have confidence in the system. The same thing with China, the same thing with Russia. They know that the dollar system, which will take out the euro and the other currency system, all connected to the central banks, once this implodes, guess what? You're going to show, and you're going to need to show that we have a system that is backed by something that's credible, not just paper, ink, and air. And this is why countries have been asking for their gold back. This is why countries have been purchasing a lot of gold. And of course, at this time, with gold being suppressed, it is a great time to purchase as much gold as possible. We know that Venezuela, well, they did a gold swap with Citigroup some years back when the sanctions were placed on them by the U.S. This was during the Obama regime. And now Venezuela is saying, listen, we want our gold back from the swap we did with Citigroup. And the Central Bank of Venezuela has paid $172 million to the American bank Citigroup to recover the gold it had swapped with the bank. Now, why do they want their gold back? Well, they've been selling their gold because under the sanctions that they're under right now, it has been very difficult and they needed to pay some bills. So they need more gold back and they've been asking for their gold back. And we can see that Venezuela gold reserves, it has been dropping for quite a while now since the sanctions have been placed on them. And what is happening here is they realize that they need all their assets back in their country. This is why other countries are doing the same exact thing. They realize once the system, and Venezuela is a very good model, once the system implodes and paper is worth absolutely nothing, which it is in Venezuela, you need hard assets to make ends meet. It's almost like your everyday household. If you have paper and ink and you have a huge amount of debt and the paper and ink is worth nothing, you're going to need hard assets to pay for that debt. You can sell a car, you can sell a home, you can sell land, you can have gold, you can have silver. But once again, when the paper completely implodes, and we've seen this throughout history, you're going to need something. And these countries realize this, and this is why they've been asking for their gold back. Now, in Argentina, we understand that they're having major problems. And the people in Argentina are very angry. They're blaming the problems on the IMF because the IMF is pushing austerity once again in Argentina. And it looks like the IMF talks may push Argentina to more central bank independence, where they're moving away from the central banking system because, once again, the people, they're angry about the situation. And I think what's happening here is people around the world, they're starting to wake up with what is going on here. That most of these countries, they're in a huge amount of debt. Many people are out of work. Austerity is being pushed on many individuals in different countries. And the situation in all these countries is not that great. Now remember, in the United States, very difficult to realize what is going on because the United States prints currency. It is the reserve currency. And they have the ability to manipulate it to make it look like everything is great. A country where they don't print currency, you can see exactly what is going on in that country because they need to continually borrow and they have to beg for that currency. And for them to receive the currency, they need to push austerity on the people. So it's recognizable very easily in these countries that there's a problem. In the United States, it's a little bit of a different story. But we can see by looking at the data here in the United States that things are not that great. Now, they can manipulate the data as much as they possibly can. They can give us the numbers. They can tell us that everything is great. But when you really look at it and you realize what is really going on, you can see that this data makes no sense whatsoever. And I've said this before in other reports. As we move forward, the data is going to separate from reality. Now, we know that there's a lot of people unemployed. We know there's a lot of people that have fallen off where the government doesn't count them because they haven't looked for a job in like 3-4 weeks, so they're just not counted. And these people are considered people who really don't want a job. So there's about 102 million people that really just don't want to work. They don't want to provide for their family. They don't want to purchase things. They don't need it, which is absolutely ridiculous. But what's very interesting about all of this is that for the first time in history, the number of job openings in the U.S. has surpassed the official number of unemployed workers. So right now, there are a lot more job openings than there are unemployed workers. Of course, this is ridiculous, but let's go with it. And yet, something about the numbers, they don't make any sense. Subsequent deep dives into the job numbers show us that the health of the job market may not be on par with where it was back in 2006, and that the job market health may be judging a book by its cover. One such indicator to note is the amount of churn that occurs between jobs. Churn is supposed to give an indication of how active participants in the workforce are in looking for better opportunities than the ones they currently have. Now, think about this for a second. That means that people who have jobs are going to be looking for better jobs, and they're going to get the better job with a higher salary. Remember, there's a lot of job openings out there. So you would expect to see a high churn rate. But guess what? We don't see that. We don't see any of that. Plus, if there's all these job openings and there's no one to fill them, the employers would say, hey, we need people to fill these positions. So let's pay more money to get someone in here. Guess what? You don't see that either. So something's wrong. Something doesn't make sense. And anyone that has worked for a corporation, who've worked in a position where you would hire people, understand what might be happening. Well, first, we know that there are people looking for jobs. We know that jobs, well, they're very difficult to get because they're really not out there. Secondly, when you're in a position in a corporation and you're trying to hire someone, you normally have job recs. And each department has their number of job recs that are filled. Now, many times, the higher management will say, listen, we're in a hiring freeze right now, but we still have job recs. We still want you to interview, but we just can't hire someone. And I think this is part of the reason the companies, they don't want to hire anyone, but the departments don't want to get rid of the job recs. So what they do is they interview people, but they never hire anyone. This way you don't have to move the salary up or down. You don't have to do anything. And it gives the illusion like there's plenty of jobs out there. Because what do? They just record the statistical number. They put it out there and everyone believes it. But once again, we're not seeing the signs that there are a lot of jobs out there, because you would see people moving from one job to another. And if there's a shortage of people, you would see the salaries moving up. But again, we don't see this whatsoever. We also see U.S. productivity. Well, the growth is not increasing. It is declining. For the 8th straight quarter, U.S. productivity grew in the first quarter, rising only 0.4%. Now, they were expecting this to be a lot higher, about 0.6%. And if you look over a period of time, you can see productivity is declining right now. And we also have to understand that wages are declining, and we're headed into a major, major problem. Now, the world leaders came together in a G7 meeting. Well, now they call it G6 plus one, and the plus one is the U.S. And what's happening here is with all the tariffs and everything that Trump is doing and the patriots behind him, they're causing a problem with all these world leaders, Canada, Germany, and the rest. And these world leaders, especially Merkel, is out there saying that with all these disagreements, the world is on fire. They're very worried about the global economy and what is going on here. And you need to remember that the push here is to bring down the global economy. Remember, this economy that we are in, that is set up by the BIS, the IMF, the Fed, the ECB, this is all a central bank system. This was not designed to help the people. It was not designed to help countries. It was designed to help the central banking system. They live in a world that is above governments because they hold the debt to all these countries, and they owe the central bank this debt. So the central banks have power over all these countries, and most of these central banks, there is no laws. Like Christine Lagarde, she doesn't even pay taxes. She's exempt. Why is she exempt? No one is exempt. Are they? Well, yes, the elite, many of them are exempt. Laws are different for inside the BIS building because they lay above governments. They lay above the laws. They believe they are above the laws. And we can see that these countries, part of the G7, they're very nervous because Trump, the patriots, and the rest, they're not playing along with their games, with what they want to do. The U.S. is going in a completely different direction because the motive here, the whole purpose of it, is to bring the system down and expose the central banking system, expose the deep state, expose what has been going on for a very long time. That's the whole purpose. And these world leaders, they don't like this because they're all part of the other system. And this is what I talk about when I say controlling the narrative. Back in the 70s, yes, the deep state, the central bankers, they controlled the narrative. They were creating the petrodollar. They were planning this for quite a while. And they put that into place, but they told us this whole entire ridiculous story about shortage of oil. We can't get supplies. We had to come off the gold standard. Well, today, it's the same thing. The system is dying. The system is done for. And both sides are trying to control the narrative. Because when the system comes down, whoever controls the narrative controls everything. And the BIS, the IMF, and the rest, they don't want to give up their power. And they're going to try to control the narrative. At the same time, the patriots, they want to control the narrative and they want to expose the central bank. So we have a battle going on right now, and we see it happening right in front of us. And there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. A little bit drips out every single day, and we've been watching this over time. And I think we're getting to the point where the patriots have a lot more control right now. And I think a lot more information is going to be coming out, and we're going to see a lot more happen. And we are going to be going through this transition. There will be a transition away from the dollar. It will be into a new system, and we're going to go through some bumps. It's going to be a bumpy road. It's going to be a little difficult. There is going to be pain. The stock market, yes, is going to come down. Yes, people are going to lose jobs. The credit system is going to freeze up. We're going to see all of this happen. Almost like in the 70s. But you have to remember, back then, we were just coming off the gold standard. We were the reserve currency, and we were moving on to the petrodollar reserve system. Today, we're going to be coming off the reserve currency, which is the petrodollar system, moving into something completely different, which is not part of the U.S. So this time it's going to be a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult than it was in the 70s. So everyone needs to be ready and prepared for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.